Ghost of Yotei is a triumph of all artistic disciplines in the video game medium. A devastating narrative hook will quickly lead to 50+ hours of riveting adventure.
I like to eat shit!
What's up, Space Pirates? This is your Admiral, the deliciously dank Dr. Disaster. And prepare to be shocked, folks. I'm about to say the most surprising thing of all time. So make sure that you're sitting down and that you haven't just ingested any beverages, but game journalists think that Ghost of Yotei is just the bestest thing ever.
I am shocked! Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
Ghost of Yotei has a score of 87 currently over on Metacritic, and you want to know how you can tell that there is a concerted effort going on right now to launder the image of this game and try to convince you that it's okay to buy it? Look at the number of reviews for this thing as of the time of this recording. The review embargo just lifted an hour or so ago, and there are already 102 reviews. The average AAA game usually only gets between 60 and 80 reviews. Look at the recently released Borderlands 4 with 78 reviews as an example, or the just released Silent Hill F has 77. The journalists only come out of the woodwork like this when there is a clear message that they think they need to tell.
Here I come to save the day!
Conversely, there are only 8 reviews for last year's Lollipop Chainsaw Repop, a game which the journos hated because it features fan service and an attractive female character. Whether or not these doofuses actually review a game very much comes down to whether or not they want a game to succeed. And Sony has almost certainly asked for help with Ghost of Yotei from the Praetorian Guard game journalists after Sucker Punch got themselves embroiled in the Charlie Kirk situation. One of their employees, if you didn't know, mocked Charlie Kirk, and that person was fired for it on the down low, and Sony and Sucker Punch failed to make a public statement condemning violence after the public demanded it. As a result, the trailers for this game have been destroyed. Fortunately for Sony though, if you promise early and exclusive access to various things, these journalists are more than willing to say shit like,
"What? I love garbage."
But what's really funny is that Sony just had their PlayStation State of Play, and during that event there was not a single mention of Ghost of Yotei, a major AAA game in their catalog that releases in about a week. They are showing the game at the Tokyo Game Show because on the international stage that game has not had near the controversy. But as for the American audience, where sales continue to slump according to my data, but as for Americans, Sucker Punch's plan seems fairly evident.
Running would be a good idea.
Get the hell out of here!
Alright, me hearties, make sure that you hit the like button on this video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, then what are you waiting for? We've lately gotten a ton of new Space Pirate additions to our crew, so we once again have to ask the obligatory question.
How many assholes we got on this ship anyhow?
Yo!
We are now sitting at 157,000 a-holes in this Space Pirate crew, and as is the custom on this channel, with every 1,000 subscribers, I add a new ship to the fleet in order to house the new guys. Someone told me that this time I needed to add the Endymion from the old Square Enix game Einhander into the fleet. If any of you have recommendations for future ships, drop them into the comment section and I will add them to my ever-growing list. Super chats get bumped to the top of that list, and also, for your reference, I will be putting a list of all the ships already in the fleet into the description of this video. In any case though, I want to thank everyone for being here. You guys are awesome.
I knew it, I'm surrounded by assholes.
But anyhow, let's take a look at this Ghost of Yotei situation. Every trailer that gets put out for this game gets absolutely embroiled in the controversy that they have courted. For a week or so there, the trailers released by Sucker Punch for the game were getting completely destroyed. But it is worth noting that the shills are out in force for this game. I think that right after the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination, a lot of these sorts of people understood how optically poor it would have been to come out and support this game, but now apparently they feel that enough time has lapsed because now they are fighting back. This features trailer here just came out a couple days ago. They've hit 375,000 views on it so far, but unlike a lot of these other trailers put out for Ghost of Yotei, they weren't ratioed in the first day. They are currently at 15,000 likes to 11,000 dislikes. I suspect that this one will be ratioed by the time all is said and done. However, it does seem that the momentum in support of the game is picking up, or momentum against it is slowing down, and I strongly expect that it comes down to all of these shills and game journalist types putting out the bat signal and calling for aid, combined with the immediate shock and outrage over Charlie Kirk's death fading at least a little bit. That being said, the controversy is definitely still a problem for Sony and Sucker Punch, which is obviously why they did not even mention this game at the State of Play yesterday. A launch trailer was just released on the same day as the State of Play, but Sony clearly wanted to divorce their State of Play from Ghost of Yotei. That is how you know that this is a game that is damaged goods and that sales have been slumping. The fact that Sony isolated this game as if it was someone sick with a plague tells you everything that you need to know. That being said, for anyone who doesn't know, I used to own my own game store where we sold video games, and I have a few contacts in the retail spaces from people who have access to the sales data of nearly 50 retail stores. And they often give me data on pre-order numbers for upcoming games so that we can see how the sales of games are trending. It was with this information that last year I correctly predicted the flop of Star Wars Outlaws and Dragon Age the Veilguard, even though game journalists were shilling hard for both of them and trying to make it seem like they were both going to be huge hits. It is also how I predicted last year that Space Marine 2 would be a massive hit that did much better than the likes of Star Wars Outlaws, and I was able to predict that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 from earlier this year was going to be a big hit despite the controversies which that game endured. With all that said, last week we talked about Ghost of Yotei and how the game had 56 pre-orders in those nearly 50 retail stores when it was 2 weeks removed from its release, meaning that it was trending behind Dragon Age the Veilguard, which had 67 pre-orders at the stage where they were 2 weeks out from release. This is not a good look for a game that needs to hit over 2 million copies in its first few days in order to keep up with its predecessor, Ghost of Tsushima. But what was really hurting Ghost of Yotei were the refunds. There were 25 refunds as of last week when we last talked about this. This week, though, the refunds seem to have slowed down. Most of the people who wanted refunds seem to have done so already as of right now. With about a week to go before release in all of these stores, Ghost of Yotei is sitting at 71 copies sold with 27 refunded copies. They still haven't overtaken Dragon Age the Veilguard though. That game, when it was a week removed from release, was at 75 copies sold. If it weren't for the refunds, Ghost of Yotei would have been trending way ahead. However, they are still way behind Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. That game ended up selling a few million copies in its first week or so, which is what Ghost of Yotei needs to end up doing, and that game, Kingdom Come, in those same retail stores, when it was a week removed from release, had sold 220 pre-orders. So, as you can see, Ghost of Yotei is trending far behind a fairly successful game like that, and I'm glad to hear it because in my view, this is still an unplayable game for a variety of reasons. not the least of which being that, as a matter of principle, and I was saying this well before the recent political violence, but as a matter of principle, I will not support any game with Erika Ishii starring in it. She is a wacko activist who has a habit of starring in games that push they-them ideology, and suffice to say that I am diametrically opposed to virtually everything that comes out of her mouth. I'm also sick of the girl boss replacement trope. Jin Sakai deserved a true sequel, so these game journalists haven't swayed me, but it is certainly worth pointing out that the game does appear to be gaining at least some momentum as shills be shilling. It will be interesting to see how effective that is as the game comes out. But I'm gonna leave it there. Drop your contempt for Sucker Punch and Ghost of Yotei into the comment section below, and we will talk there. Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your Admiral is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.